So here we are on this spiritual path together. But for most of us, it took something to get ourselves here, didn't it? The question I have for you is, what was your barrier to finding spirituality? Another way to ask it is, what kept you from accessing a path to connect with your own soul? What were those barriers? We all had such a path. Even if you were born and raised in a home based in spirituality itself, we all have to make this personal choice to approach this particular staircase in life. So, our theme this year is about claiming higher ground. We do that through spiritual practice and through spirituality in general. And this is a particular staircase that we climb in life. And once we choose to engage with this staircase, we often have barriers that keep us from climbing it. And that's what I want to talk about this morning. So I think of it as the grand staircase. Kind of imagine it like this. Isn't that beautiful? I was looking for the coolest image I could find of a spiral staircase because I believe that's what we're doing spiritually, is we're coming around to the same kinds of experiences in life over and over again. And as we grow, we go up in that staircase. So I call this the grand staircase of spiritual awareness. And the question is, what prevented you all those years from looking up and starting to climb? I will share the wisdom I have about this from my own path to this particular grand staircase, but I want you to be thinking about it for yourself. So I feel like I was born like halfway up the staircase because in my home, my father had a significant relationship with God. I was taught how to pray, how to be baptized, how to not sin and mess up my personal access to the staircase. And here's the deal. I was taught that to believe that only some special people got to go all the way to the top of the staircase. I was taught that the spiral staircase led to a real place with streets of gold where no bad people lived, meaning like no druggy rock stars or Sufi mystics or Jewish people, like basically anyone my father and men like him found to be unlike us, they weren't going to go there, right? So, and I was also taught that the staircase wasn't actually open to the kind of people that I was slowly realizing myself to be. I was a lesbian, a rebel, someone who asked a ton of questions. I got mad at God. I dressed in inappropriate ways, and even that I was someone who loved everyone else regardless of their access to the stairwell. There was some sort of like staircase monitor that had the power to grant or deny access. It was so confusing. And it was so very painful that I refused to go up the grand staircase at all. I wanted nothing to do with it. I actually started to go down the staircase to this cynical place where Jesus could be a punchline, or the word God couldn't even be spoken seriously in my presence. And down the staircase where I looked at people heading up the staircase as kind of simple-minded, Christian kind of lunatics. It just unrelatable in any way, assuming that they hated me because I was everything that I was. Basically, if the monitor said you could go, I didn't want to be a part of that group. That's how I was. That was one of my biggest barriers. So down I went into cynicism and skepticism and sarcasm and, quite frankly, fear of damnation and non-redemption. I know this must be pretty common because last week I was given this song which captures this idea so well. So I'm going to actually interrupt my message to share a brand new video that really spoke to me about my relationship with this grand staircase. I was indeed a church girl.
Hey, church girl, doing everything wrong. walking on eggshells with your high heels on. Hey, church girl with a Jezebel dress, better take it off, you're making all the boys think sex. You got your questions, but you're too scared to ask. I'm just a sinner who's been where you're at. So you like to get high when you talk to Jesus. So you love who you love, and you go out on the weekend. So you drink and you think for yourself. That don't mean you'll go to hell when you leave this world. Just 'cause you heard it in church, girl. Hey, church girl, wearing all that guilt. Just 'cause you didn't wait don't mean it wasn't real. You turn up a song that is an amazing grace. They say that you're hopeless, but that just ain't the case. So you like to get high when you talk to Jesus. So you love who you love, and you go out on the weekend. So you drink and you think for yourself. That don't mean you'll go to hell when you leave this world. Just 'cause you heard it in church, girl. I've heard what you've heard, girl. Read every Bible verse, girl. If God is who He says He is, then I don't think you're cursed, girl. Just 'cause you like to get high when you talk to Jesus. So you love who you love, and you go out on the weekend. So you drink and you think for yourself. That don't mean you'll go to hell when you leave this world. Just 'cause you heard it in church, girl.
Carly Pierce. You know, I was listening to a DJ talk about that song, and she was talking about how it hurt, that it hurt. And I thought, wow, it fits this message so well today, because that is a barrier that so many people have to even approaching the idea of God in any way. And I love that this kind of message is available to those who, like me, have kind of walked away from the God of judgment and turned away from this kind of amazing grand staircase that we look at. So I walked away in my 20s, and I was spending my creative energy and time on other staircases that seemed more important to becoming a good human being. Staircases like those that were filled with people like me, you know, other parents and the gay community in general, and activism about civil rights and things like that, in the staircase of education and personal development and career success. And I was climbing staircases. I was just avoiding the grand one of spiritual awareness. Then my life kind of fell apart. You know, I had a special needs kid, and her near-death stuff and unexpected divorce shortly thereafter, and I found myself looking at my inner life and realizing that there was this grand staircase to spirit, and I saw that I had kind of stagnated on the level that I was at for way too many years, and I was hungry for some spiritual meaning, but I was also very, very, very reluctant. And when I looked at it, I asked myself questions like, do I really want to reopen the topic of God in my life? Can I even trust what another human being would teach about God after everything that I have been taught in that part of my life? And what about exposing, your daughter to the kind of messages that you got that might confuse her about her family's worthiness? The answer was no, because that was the truest answer. But something deep within me kept pulling me to reconsider. So my barrier to starting to ascend the grand staircase was my need to heal the wounds of my religious experiences, the need to accept that I had universal experiences that often occur on these lower level steps of this staircase. Because as we evolve as a human race, but as individuals, we often pass through the human experience of God that includes a lot of fear, a lot of control and shame. And we all know religious experiences where the leaders need to control what the participants wear, how they worship, how they vote, who they agree to despise, and who can belong and not belong, and how their participants feel about those who don't follow. Control out of fear and shame. It's one of those lower steps on the staircase. And I soon realized that I didn't have to start with my daughter on those lowest steps. Those kinds of beliefs and teachings were no longer relevant in my experience, and I could release them. I found for myself that as we ascend this grand staircase, we do draw to ourselves teachers and books and churches and healing and messages that lead us upward to spiritual experiences that are bathed in unconditional acceptance, belonging, and encouragement to experience every good thing about spirit as we slowly realize we are spirit. It took a lot for me to say yes to doing anything beyond reading Oprah authors on soulful topics, right? But the further I got to an idea of God as pure love, up the staircase I began to climb, and through a CSL, very much like this group, I allowed any resistance to God to kind of melt away, and I climbed, and I began to understand the power of surrounding myself with others who were also claiming higher ground and freeing themselves from lower vibrations of fear and judgment, all tied around the idea of God. And here I am, I'm still climbing. So letting go of my religious path was what was necessary to start ascending this grand staircase. But that's my story. My question is, what must you release or heal or climb over to rise on the grand staircase? Because this staircase leads to inner peace. It leads to better relationship. It leads to more laughter and joy. It leads to financial freedom. And how do I know these things are possible for you? I know because the grand staircase is actually a staircase of self-love. We talked about that in Sacred Cup this morning. And when we see ourselves as our soul, self-love is guaranteed. And self-love is what opens the door to all those beautiful things I just listed. And if that is where it leads, then let's work on whatever it is that stands between you and the next step upward. But that barrier is different for every person. So let's talk about Terry for a second. Isn't it fun when we talk about Terry? So I'm going to share her example because it is the exact opposite of mine. I know there are people hearing this message who have my kind of religious wounding and painful background because of all the religions that are based in fear, and because there are songs like that playing on the radio today. I know there are people who can better relate to mine, but I know that some of y'all are going to be able to relate to Terry's barrier to ascending the grand staircase too. So Terry did not start her lifetime in a family intent on living in relationship with God. Her parents weren't church-going folks, okay? So however, she does have a really, really cute Easter Sunday matching outfit, kind of Methodist church picture of her family. It's so cute. But they were by no means heathens. They just were busy farmers that had work to do on Sunday. There was no Bible studying, No praying, just an occasional Sunday school visit with grandparents, right? There was also no big judgment of others because there wasn't a lot of fear being passed around. The bottom line is she wasn't made aware that there was a grand staircase that was very important. No one around her was like seeking. Basically, she was emotionally stable and she handled her life crisis, whatever arose on her path, just fine without the need to figure out how to enlist the help of this higher power thing. She was just fine without it. Well, when I walked into her house, that's what she reports. But when I walked into her house for the very first time, she had a meditation book authored by Mark Nepo, one of our favorite authors around here, right beside her reading chair. She had taken classes on meditation and yoga. She understood mindfulness. Yeah, she was climbing the staircase of spirit. She just didn't call it that. And her journey didn't start on those lower steps of fear and shame and control like mine did. But when she met me, she was like questioning the relatability of this whole minister thing and spiritual teacher thing, right? But the more I described this grand staircase and that it was really about self-love and not about this vague Methodist man on a cloud God thing, she wasn't being asked to believe that the staircase I was climbing wasn't ending up on a street of gold somewhere in the sky. She got kind of interested in climbing it, and here we are. So maybe you can relate to the barrier of not really seeing the purpose of an awareness of spirit. But whatever it was that was your barrier to overcome to join us on this grand staircase, I'm just glad you decided to give it a shot. So whether you've been here since the beginning of the founding of this center or you just ordered your fancy pants name tag on the last order, you've been steadily climbing this grand staircase of spiritual awareness your entire life, and maybe in lifetimes before this. And today we all find ourselves right here on the same stair. Over and over in community, we come together to take a step up the staircase kind of as a group. And now that you're here, what can you learn about this grand staircase of spiritual awareness that will help you continue to rise? Whether it's unlearning things that you were taught, like I did for years and years and years, and I'm still doing to this very day, or looking at concepts of God for the very first time, here are some things to listen out for. One, listen out for the grand staircase is central in everyone's life path. We're all souls trying to remember our connection to spirit on this human plane. Being human and surviving on this planet requires so much of our ego energy that sometimes the spiritual staircase gets low on our priority list, doesn't it? Also, all religious teachings are trying to help you understand this staircase. And you have to decide whether what you were taught from religion can help you ascend further into love, or does your religious exposure pull you into self-judgment or judgment of others. Either way, remember the staircase is the point, not the religion. There's no one blocking your path up the staircase of spiritual awareness except you. No authority figure has any say over your connection with God or your worthiness to ascend. Everyone is working on their own staircase journey, and you get to work on your own. Another thing to think about is here you're going to learn to identify with your soul as a soul instead of your human body, your accomplishments, your appearance, your personality. Those are secondary. You are a soul, and this change of identity opens up the path of greater self-love. No one can ever think of a reason their soul is unlovable. It takes practice to keep ourselves alert so that we can keep choosing a higher step and a higher step. And being around others who are climbing the staircase is so very helpful. So my invitation to you today is to celebrate that you have found a place and a group of people who can help you with this central learning path in your life. The grand staircase of spiritual awareness leads to every good thing, so lean in. And here's the thing, when we walk up together, we don't individually have to go through everything hard for us to learn the lessons that being human has to offer. You know, I can go through one hard thing and another one of us can go through another one, and we can all learn by witnessing each other. When we authentically share our journey here, we all rise through it. But the good news is also that we get to celebrate everyone's triumphs and victories. We all get a piece of the birthday cake, right? Every year, every month, actually. But we also feel joy when someone else is struggling with infertility and they conceive, or announces a remission, or lands a new dream job, or meets the love of their life. When one of us gets a raise and manifests our intentions, we all understand a spiritual breakthrough when it happens to any one of us. So climbing the grand staircase can certainly be done in solitude. There's great value in spending time in an ashram to inner contemplation, or hiking the Camino for introspection in a deeper way for many weeks. Spirit meets you in whatever way resonates with you. But if you are blessed with a community to walk with, lean in and grab someone's hand. I think it was Ram Dass who said, we're all just walking each other home. We're walking each other to greater awareness. So I'm so thankful that you met me on the staircase and decided to climb to higher ground together. As Hafiz wrote, the Sufi poet said, your heart and my heart are very, very old friends.